Hello, fifth graders. This is Miss Pausine, and we are going to read chapter 15 together about the Bill of Rights. This is our final chapter of the textbook that we will be learning about during distance learning. So, the Bill of Rights. What are the basic rights and freedoms of the American people? The introduction. In chapter 14, we talked about the Constitution, how it creates a strong government for the United States. In this chapter, you will read about the first 10 amendments, or changes to the Constitution. They protect the rights and liberties of American citizens. Together, these amendments are called the Bill of Rights. The Constitution described how the nation's new national government would work. But the Constitution did not say how citizens would be protected from the government's power. Many Americans wanted the Constitution to include a bill or list of rights for citizens that the government would always have to respect. The Bill of Rights is like a shield that protects all citizens. For example, the Fifth and Sixth Amendments describe the rights of those accused of a crime. Among these rights are the right to a lawyer and to the right of a jury with a fair trial. A jury is a group of citizens who are chosen to decide the outcome of a trial. Look at this drawing. As you learn about the Bill of Rights, think of it as a shield. Why did Americans in 1789 want a shield to protect them from a strong central government? What rights and freedoms are protected by the Bill of Rights? How do these rights affect the lives of American citizens today? The need for a Bill of Rights. The Constitution was completed in 1787. Then it had to be ratified by at least 9 states. To ratify means to approve, to make a written document official by signing it. This had to be done by at least 9 states. Americans fiercely debated whether to approve the Constitution. Many people were afraid that it made the national government too strong. They had already fought a war because British rule had not respected their rights. Americans did not want this to happen again under their new government. In several states, the vote on the Constitution was very close. Supporters James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay gained votes by publishing essays called the Federalist Papers. In these essays, the 3 men explained why a strong central government would be good for a nation. Madison and others also proposed adding a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. It would list rights and freedoms that the government could not take away from American citizens. This proposal held win approval for the Constitution. By July 1788, 9 states had ratified the document. The following March, the new national government gathered for the first time in New York City. The first Congress faced the important task of considering changes to the Constitution. The men who wrote the Constitution had included a process of adding amendments. The states had sent Congress ideas for their first changes. A number of the ideas concerned a Bill of Rights. Madison sorted through the many suggestions, then he proposed the first set of amendments to Congress. On September 27, 1789, Congress voted to approve the 10 amendments now known as the Bill of Rights. These amendments were then sent to the states for ratification. By December 15, 1791, enough states had approved them. The amendments became part of the Constitution. Over time, the courts have interpreted how the Constitution applies to various situations. In this way, the meaning of the Bill of Rights has grown in the years since 1791. Here we have a picture of James Madison. James Madison proposed to Congress the set of amendments that is known now as the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment. Oops. All right, the First Amendment. The First Amendment stops Congress from making laws that take away basic freedoms. These include freedom of religion, speech, and the press. So the First Amendment is about religion, speech, and press. Many early Americans sought freedom of religion. For example, the Pilgrims left England because the king had forced them to worship in the Church of England. Some American colonies had also demanded that people join one church. The First Amendment protects Americans' freedom to choose their religious beliefs and practices. Americans worship in many ways. Some people don't practice any religion. To protect the people's right to choose, the courts have said that public schools cannot require students to say prayer in school. Freedom of speech protects the people's right to give opinions. Americans can criticize the government and express unpopular ideas. Americans wanted this right because many colonists have been arrested for criticizing British laws. In modern times, leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. spoke out for laws that protect the rights of all people. Without the First Amendment, King might have been put in jail for his words. Freedom of speech does have some limits. People cannot use this right to harm others or to break the law. For example, suppose someone just yells, "Fire!" in a crowded theater when there is no danger. Because people might get hurt in the rush to escape the theater, this kind of speech is not protected. Freedom of the press protects the right for people, or for report news, to give opinions in newspapers and in other forms. Americans wanted to guard this right because the British had jailed newspaper writers and editors for printing complaints about the British actions. But freedom of the press also has limits. For example, it does not include the freedom to write lies about people. If we look up here for this caption, the First Amendment protects citizens' rights to speak out against the government. These students here are exercising their right of freedom of speech, as the Supreme Court considers a case involving freedom of speech in schools. The First Amendment also protects people's right to assemble or gather in groups, and it gives Americans the right to petition or to ask the government to correct any injustices. So whatever they feel is wrong, they have the right to speak out and ask for another look. Here we have Minutemen, like this farmer. He had fought for independence in 1789. People wanted to protect their rights to use guns to defend themselves and protect their families. The Second Amendment, which we'll read about, gave them the right to keep and bear arms. The Second Amendment. The Second Amendment says that each state needs a militia, or an army of citizens. Therefore, the government cannot take away the people's right to keep and bear arms. Americans in 1789 wanted to be able to defend themselves. Men had used their muskets against British troops in the American Revolution. People remembered how these citizen soldiers had bravely fought for their rights. At this time, people also used guns in everyday life, to hunt for food and to protect their families. There were no police to keep order. Since many people lived in the countryside with few neighbors nearby, they feared being attacked by outlaws or American Indians. Today, the Second Amendment protects the right to own guns, but people disagree about whether every person should have the right to own any type of gun. Many people say no. They are disturbed by events such as violent crimes and accidental shootings involving guns. They think that laws should control who can carry and own guns. They want laws that restrict the right to own some kind of weapons. Others argue that the Second Amendment does not allow such laws. These people do not think that citizens should lose the right to have any type of gun just because some people misuse it. In this picture here, you'll notice there are a lot of people. And before the war, British officials could search the colonists' homes or shops, and they could take whatever they found and use it as evidence in court. We'll read about in the next part about the Fourth Amendment that protects people from such acts.